Shalom Israel. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, by Hashem Rakak Wadash. Yahweh is who the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh Shai is his son, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. And there's no God beside them. Double honors to the elder apostles and the elder bishops of GMS, or Great Millstone. Salutations to the elect, whom the Lord have given ears to hear. Hey, World War III may very well happen under Trump's rulership. Over here at the RT News, it says, "Don't worry about World War III, Trump." Now, we know whenever this devil says don't worry about something, you can expect the opposite. Just like he said when he first came in, that he would stop these various wars within a matter of days, and they have done nothing but escalate. The war of Israel and Hamas and Gaza, the war of Ukraine and Russia, they have done nothing but escalate. And it says the U.S. president has claimed he prevented the Ukraine conflict from escalating into a global confrontation. U.S. President Donald Trump has declared that the world is no longer facing the prospect of the Ukraine conflict escalating into World War III. Trump has repeatedly said that global tensions peaked when relations between Moscow and Washington hit their lowest point during former President Joe Biden's tenure. He has also accused his predecessor of provoking the Ukraine conflict by backing Kyiv's NATO ambitions despite Moscow's legitimate concerns. In a podcast with radio host Mark Levine, published on Wednesday, Trump said that when he came into office earlier this year, the Ukraine conflict was raging and heading to World War III. However, he argued that now you're not going to have that anymore. That's the nice part. You're not going to have to worry about that, Trump said, admitting that it remains to be seen how exactly the conflict will be resolved. Right? So he's just speaking, like the saying goes, he's speaking out of both sides of his mouth. Now it says, since the return to office, Trump has taken a markedly different approach toward Russia compared to Biden. He has reopened high-level diplomatic channels with Moscow and communicated directly with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Last week, Trump hosted Putin in Alaska for the first face-to-face talks between American and Russian leaders since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict in February 2022. On Monday, Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky and several European leaders arrived in Washington for talks with Trump. Trump described his talks with Putin as very productive and said the meetings had made a settlement more realistic. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters that there is now light at the end of the tunnel and an opportunity for lasting peace. U.S. officials have emphasized that the process will take time, but have insisted that progress has been made. Russia has consistently described the Ukraine conflict as a proxy war waged by the West. And I think that's a good point, because a lot of these wars are proxy wars. Proxy war, as a matter of fact, we do a little research. What is a proxy war? This is a proxy war is a conflict in which external powers avoid direct fighting by using third parties, such as smaller states or non-state actors, to advance their own strategic interests, often by providing them with money, weapons, and training. Right? Like, if you do your homework, it is said that, these various so-called terror groups over there in the Middle East, why is it that they have American weaponry, American-made guns and bombs and so on and so forth? Because those wars are proxy wars. All right, just like you have something known as an economic hitman, which is used to destabilize a country through various means. That's what a proxy war is. To destabilize a country, so therefore, you know, his motto as problem, reaction, solution can be commenced, where he creates the problem so that his solution, you know, his country or, you know, his puppet president can be set up as the solution. These wars are fought through these proxies, allowing major powers to compete globally, and inflict damage on rivals without risking a large-scale confrontation. Especially in the nuclear age, examples include the Cold War conflicts like the Korean and Vietnam Wars, where the US and Soviet Union supported opposing sides in regional conflicts. Right? So it says key characteristics are indirect combat, support for third parties, strategic interests, risk reduction, principal-agent relationships. Okay? So it says Russia has consistently described the Ukraine conflict as a proxy war waged by the West. All right? And it's well known also that the West, you know, is providing Ukraine with support, financial support. All right. If the West had nothing to do with that war, you know, why is this guy Zelensky, you know, sitting pretty in the Oval Office with Vance and Trump? Now, as a so-called PR stunt, you know, it was to where they cursed him out and they chewed this guy Zelensky out, but it's well understood, you know, who's behind the Ukrainian conflict. Whereas, you know, if they hadn't received help and aid and, you know, various weaponry, indirectly, of course, talking about the Ukrainians, then that war would have been finished. But it says Moscow has accused NATO of seeking to escalate the confrontation and has warned that the deployment of Western troops in Ukraine could risk triggering a world war. Now, when we read up, there was another article that we see that says Macron wants boots on the ground in Ukraine. Right? And again, what I'm seeing here is that this could force the US to intervene. Because if something happens to the EU or NATO, right, the EU states, if something happens to these EU states, then Trump has to step in. It says the French president has repeated his call for Western peacekeepers in the country despite Moscow's warnings. European forces should take part in future peacekeeping operations in Ukraine, French President Emmanuel Macron told journalists on Monday. The proposal has repeatedly been rejected by Moscow as unacceptable and dangerous. Macron made the comments in Washington after a White House summit on Monday with U.S. President Donald Trump, Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky, and several European leaders who met to discuss possible terms for ending the conflict. Speaking for reporters following the meeting, Macron said that Ukraine must have a strong army and that Western Europe will need to help Ukraine with boots on the ground, right? Because their thing is, what's to stop Russia from, traveling to European borders once they arrest Ukraine. So they want to take preemptive measures by joining Ukraine in a fight against Russia. It says, we will need peacekeeping operations which allies of Ukraine are willing to supply. The French president has raised the idea several times in recent months alongside British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, but the proposal has not gained support from other European leaders, right? Because you ain't trying to fuck with Russia, man. You know, they can end shit over there. Plus, of course, as we should know, that's a nuclear power. And that's why America has to tread lightly when dealing with Russia. And essentially, World War III will happen. All right? We know that according to Revelation 11 and 14. Those are 9 and 14. Okay. 11 and 14. Okay. The Wadi Yahabashim Yahushua says, I got to make this quick. So we're going to start at 11. But after 3 days and a half, God breathed life into them, his prophets, right? His elect, and they stood up. Terror struck all who were staring at them. And this is important to know, who has this part of prophecy, because like even Yahushua said, when his words shall go throughout the four corners of the earth, then shall the end come. And that 3 days and a half was around the time of 1970, when Abba Bivens came on the scene and with his word began to go out. Right? Now, there wasn't cameras and the internet like it is now. So Abba Bivens had to build up various men, Elder Yaquab, Elder Ariah, Masha, and then they built up, the men of One West. Now the men of One West went out there in the highways and hedges, right? You got the Apostles of Great Millstone, you got the IUIC and various sects, where from New York and the invention of the internet, brothers have woken up throughout the four corners of the earth. Now it says, that was after that 3 days and a half. Terror struck all who were staring at them. Then a loud voice from heaven called to the two prophets, come up here. And they rose to heaven in a cloud as their enemies watched. All right. And this is yet to happen, as the salvation of the elect is simultaneous with World War III. You can find that in the book of Matthew, the 24th chapter. At the same time, there was a terrible quake that destroyed a tenth of the city. 7,000 people died in the earthquake, and everyone else was terrified and gave glory to God of heaven. So this proves at the same time of the salvation of the elect that those nuclear missiles are going to be flying, because as we read in Joel 2, the earth quaked at the movement of those missiles. It was known as like horses running. The second terrorist pass, right? The second World War, which that gave paved way for the Third World War. Like Isaac Newton said, I know not at what the Third World War will be fought. All right, in which he saw the creation of the atomic bomb. All right, which was at the end of the Second World War. So the atomic bomb gave information and knowledge to go further and create what's known today as a nuclear bomb, which again is going to bring the earthquakes and destroy various parts of the earth. America being destroyed in its totality. The second terror is past, but look, the third terror is coming quickly. So that's what we're seeing. All right, and we're seeing a warmonger narcissist ruling the earth. Hey, Esau is the end of the world, right? And meaning he's going to orchestrate his own downfall, as he is a warmonger. And let's go here. Isaiah 57:20. Right? And this is actually, we'll read it in the KJV and then go to the NLT. But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. Right? And it says that here in 20, but those who still reject me are like the restless sea, which is never still, but continuously churns up mud and dirt. And as long as this devil is in rulership, the earth will always be at a scare of war. Right? Now, simultaneously around these Ukraine talks, there's talks of UFOs, so-called UFOs, you know, which we know that they're going to aid in the salvation of the elect in the time of Jacob's trouble, which is prior to World War III, and in World War III. Right? So these are various signs, you know, to know that we're close. Again, the prophets, the men of the Lord, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth, the sightings of the chariots, so much so that they're even holding summits. Right? And then various escalations. All right? And like we always bring out 1 Thessalonians 5:3, when they shall say peace and safety. Now that's a prime example, when they shall say peace and safety. Right? Then sudden destruction. And essentially, like we read in verse 21, there is no peace for the wicked, says my God. So there's no peace. There will never be peace as long as this man is in rulership, because he thrives off of chaos. This is Job chapter 18 verse 5. Surely the light of the wicked will be snuffed out. Right? And that's going to come at those nuclear missiles. Right? That's going to bring a new day. When this current society, all right, this current rulership is going to be snuffed out. Remember, the scriptures say, like I said, I'm, kind of all over the place, but just various thoughts. But the scriptures say in the book of Daniel that the body of the beast, was it things of Revelation? It escapes me now. But it says that the beast shall be burned with fire. The whore shall be burned with fire. And that's talking about this place, the whore that sitteth upon many waters. Right? Eventually World War III will happen and them nukes will be sent off. It says, hey, if not by man, you know that AI is going to do it. But it says, surely the light of the wicked shall be snuffed out. The sparks of their fire will not glow. The light in their tent will grow dark. Right? And essentially, like the scripture say in Isaiah 47, it speaks on how the Lord is not going to meet them as a man. And how these ain't the angels on the left hand side is going to leave them. Pretty much leaving them to hold it back. In other words, their prosperity, their NWO, is going to be taken away. Right? Even if they feel like, World War III is going to help them and benefit them so that they can reset things, they got another thing coming. Right? The scriptures, again, as I allude to Matthew 24, it says immediately after the tribulation of those days, where Yahushua pretty much come. Right? So Yahushua is on his way, man. And this devil is on his way out. Right? Righteousness is on his way in, and wickedness is on his way out. So if that, Lord willing, you argument Aqua for edified, shalom to the elect.